Hello and welcome to PolyInnovator. This is the episode 5 of the PolyInnovator Omni-Content. My name is Dustin, and it is my ambition to inform and educate a community of innovators, as well as just help you come to the right place for success. This is TeleInnovator if you're watching, and if you're listening in, you will be on the PolyCASTS. Those are the two types of content that I create for this, as well as the OMNIBLOG, which you can read. And now we're going over the slide deck that I prepared for the blog that was made. So it's kind of a four-way content episode series. And each time I make this, there's generally a decent break in between the episodes, so I just want to quickly explain that.
Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator.
So a multipotentialite is the potential to do so many things in your life. And I really wanted to start out with this. In fact, this episode was going to be something about how to code or something like that, just to kind of help people out with choosing what they want to learn. But I realized that the next 5-ish episodes are about the Polymath Spectrum, or a series I call the Polymath, but I may even change it to Spectrum because it's interesting because all of these different terms people use, multipotentialites, jack of all trades, polymath, PolyInnovator, whatever term we're focusing on, they don't really make much sense to the normal people because either they don't resonate with the idea or they think it's a bad thing. Like a jack of all trades is often construed to be bad. And just to kind of touch on that real quick, the saying always goes like a jack of all trades, master of none. But the actual full saying goes jack of all trades, master of none, but often sometimes better than one. And so it's sometimes better to be someone who's a generalistic rather than be just a specialist. And a multipotentialite is someone who has the potential to become a generalist in polymath and has the potential to do many different things. And the cool thing about it, and we'll get into this in a few different slides, is that I feel like even people who are naturally polymathic, naturally multi-potential, they'll obviously want to go down that path. However, even specialists can benefit from being a multipotentialite and someone who is interested in many different areas. And I do think you could become one if you choose to. And understanding that, I think, is really helpful. So this is great. It's just the title screen. Let's move on to the next one. So this is the Polymath Spectrum that I mentioned before, and I feel like there might be another one to add in there at some point, but I wanted to just keep it simple for now, and I like this image here. It really kind of shows just the level of competency. Each one of those levels here, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is a competency-based area. And so it's not about what you know, and not even about doing one or multiple things. It's how much you know in each of those pillars of knowledge. And so on the PolyCAST, for example, when I was talking to Abhishek Lahoti, we were talking about this forest of knowledge. And each subject that you're learning is its own tree. And each of those trees can branch out. And when those trees branch out, they can sometimes interweave with each other. This is why some trees actually twist together if they grow near each other close enough. And I think that analogy is perfect for knowledge pools, because if you have many trees and you become more of a forest rather than a great big oak, you have more diversity in the biodiversity, so to speak. And this analogy can keep going deeper and deeper into the naturalistic, but I think it's interesting that knowledge is the same thing. The more you know in different pillars or trees, the more it starts branching together. And someone who's on this polymath spectrum, regardless of what level you're at, has the ability to see that interdisciplinary skill set. So multipotentialites to start. That is the potential to do many things. It's almost as if you are... It's exciting. It's curious. It's someone who is like, wow, the whole world's amazing. Every little thing seems really interesting. And it's an innate curiosity that I think is really important. And then we have the jack of all trades. I don't see it as something negative like many people often misconstrue it to be. A jack of all trades is just someone with novice level competency in many different areas. And sometimes you can maybe see a jack of all trades with higher levels of competency, but this is not as common. So generally, a jack of all trades is someone with a novice level. Then a generalist is someone who's a bit more competent, a bit more adept in many different areas, and he or she is able to do many different things at a pretty good skill cap. And then a universalist, which is where I'd actually particularly see myself, is someone who has a deep level of knowledge in many different areas. And just for example, I've been teaching swimming for almost a decade, as well as fitness exercise. And then on top of that, marketing and content creation I've been doing for almost 9 years as well. So for both of those, I have a high level of competency. But since it's only a couple areas, and I'm only maybe adept or journeyman level, I wouldn't consider myself a master by any means, I still only am a universalist level, someone who's universally knowledgeable in many different areas. Because if you come to me and start talking to me about construction or smart city planning, or even something that's out of my wheelhouse, such as chemistry, I still probably be able to keep up in conversation with those things. And that's because it's a universalism. What's the word for that? Well, I'm keeping that little blooper. A universalist idea, having a cohesive understanding of many different areas. And then a polymath, someone who has a deep level of knowledge, master level even, in many different areas, such as like Leonardo da Vinci or Elon Musk. And then the next slide. Why should you care? Why should you care? Because it's not everyone's path to just choose one vocation or specialty. There is a giant subset of the population, and I say a large, it's giant. There's a big number of people who are polymathic by nature. It just happens to be that way. Or in other words, multipotentialites, people to potential, I need to slow down, to do many different things. And I get so upset about this because for the past 100 years, we've been, as a society, confined to this specialist idea. And there's people like me and other multipotentialites who have the ability to do so many different things and make these linky brain concepts, such as Alex Dunstan says. And it's just one of those things where I wanted to exemplify those people and give them a voice. That's why I make this content. Perhaps you're one yourself and you don't even know it. Oh man, the camera's coming out there, but someone who is curious about many different things and wants to pursue each of them. And I think that's the kind of the key point there. Everyone has interests and things they want to go into a hobby or things they want to be a career. Even a specialist like, oh, I want to do this, this, and this, and this. But it's the person who's like multipotentialite, someone who's a generalist who actually goes and does it. And it's not a lack of focus. It's a lack of discipline to actually go and do it. And I think that there's a level of micro focus and macro focus of knowing where you want to be and how you want to get there. But it's not flaky. It's not bad. It's just a matter of having to have more discipline than a specialist would have to, because you have to keep yourself in line with multiple different areas and not let one of them waver, not one of them get too high. It's kind of a balance. I think this is why. From my experience, it's not about what you know. It's about how much you know, as I was mentioning earlier. And so no matter what, if it's a specialty or multiple specialties, it is about how much you know in that area. And that's why specialists often look down upon multipotentialites, because most of these multipotentialites or jack of all trades are at a low skill level. And the one reason why I think that is because the internet is still young. If we look 20 years from now, I think that even if I weren't to create content like this, and other people like me, like Polymathic Wallace or anything like that, even if they weren't making content about it, I think that it would just naturally occur for these interdisciplinary people to crop up. And now that people like myself and Eric and Michael and all these other people who are creating polymath content are doing it, it's just going to accelerate that. And so it's one of those things where at this point, people who realized, oh, I am polymathic and I want to pursue that, they're generally probably on the start of their journey. However, I do think there's a lot of people at the end of their journey, someone who's at 90 years old, 100 years old, who are actually polymaths without even realizing it. So I do think that there's people who throughout the entire 100 years who've done it, but it hasn't been a cultural norm, let alone a concept people can naturally employ mentally. So whatever term suits you, just find new connections, bridge them together, and start to accept this internet renaissance that we're going into. I was looking at some of these slides and some of them we need to flip around. But think of it in the forms of macro and micro focus. So this is a polycast that I created, I believe, yesterday, or at the very least today, one of the two. But it relates to this because as a multi-potentialite, you have to be able to have this self-awareness of like, hey, what am I doing right now? Is it aligned with what I'm curious about? Am I focusing on that? Or am I just doing it for the sake of doing it? And I think a lot of multi-potentialites lose interest because of that. Because they're like, okay, I just feel like I'm doing this for no reason. All right. Okay. So what are the tasks that you need to get done? Are you curious about this one skill area or wanting to pursue this knowledge pool? Or is it just a matter of like, hey, I'm curious about this for today and today only? Having that self-awareness of like, in this micro-focused state, what do I need to be focusing on? As well as the macro. If I have a particular goal that I want to work towards, such as for me, my overall goal for this year was to do these Omnicontents every day. It's not that much work for me to do, and yet I still haven't been able to get myself accountable enough to do it. Whereas with the Polymath PolyCast, when I started doing the TeleInnovator discussions and interviews, it's interesting because most of the time I can get them done. Even if it's at the last minute, I'll make sure it gets done. Whereas with Omnicontent, I haven't been able to be as accountable for it. So my macro focus is not aligned with my micro focus. And I'm self-aware of that, which is why I get so mad at myself for it. But I want people to understand that it's not just about getting frustrated with yourself or being happy with yourself. It's just being aware. And that's what I really wanted people to get out of that. I tried switching the camera over, but essentially, what are some of the things that are important as a multipotentialite? For one, curiosity. 2, hyper-focus. 3, creative nature. And then 4, the potential. And that's even in the name. So back to that curiosity idea. It's one of those things that is innate. I think that as human natures, as human beings, it's our nature to be curious. From a baby to even an adult. But as we get older, especially with our schooling, it starts to temper away our natural curiosity. And that is not okay. We need to have that to be grown, not squandered, but grown and seeded and cultivated. Curiosity is innate, but it's also a skill. You can cultivate it consciously and with effort. So I want people to be able to reach a new ceiling of curiosity today and try to find some person to talk to, some new skill, something that will challenge you to be curious about that person or thing. The other thing is hyperfocus. Now, some people might say this is more along the lines of like ADHD or something like that, but I believe it's more of this really curiosity again. If you are really interested about something, nothing's going to stop you from learning it. And so one thing I see about multipotentialites is that they don't let some of the societal norms stop them from doing it. Like, oh, it's not normal to go study that for 12 hours or something like that. And so these people, me even, will spend 12 hours digging into a subject. I remember one day I told myself I wanted to go to WGU, Western Governors University. This was a while back. And in order to do so, I needed previous college credit. They said for the degree I wanted, I needed calculus. Mind you, I was always sucking at math in school, but calculus was something I was able to pick up a little bit. And so I told myself, okay, I can study this. And so I spent 13 hours straight with a little lunch break actually in the middle, focusing on learning calculus. And I was interested in it too. I learned how to find a derivative, understand integrals just from that one experience, let alone the week or two that I was doing it total. And so being able to dig deep into that and have a swath of information thrown at you, I think is really important to understand that specialists don't do that very well. They do it in a more deep work sense, but not necessarily in a hyper-focused sense. Then creative, when you have all these different trees of knowledge coming together, it can really branch together and create new ideas and spawn this innovation that's far greater than what most specialists can accomplish. And I'm not trying to diss on those people because specialists are great, and because of that we've had many innovations as well. Potential, once again, the multi-potentialite, someone who has the potential to do many different things, and that is the start of becoming a polymath. It is a start of the spectrum. You are growing with the competency into a polymath. So this is just as multipotentialites. It's a little mind map just to see if people needed a more visual sense. I'll leave it up for a second here, read over it, so if someone's listening on IGTV, you probably won't be able to read this. You get to be super productive at times because you care so much. It sharpens your ability to learn, synergize between knowledge areas, those branches of trees coming together, and you put your interests first, and you begin with the end in mind. Polymathy. Multipotentialite goes into a polymath down the line. Being proactive in your self-awareness because you need to know that micro and macro focus, and you get to think interdisciplinary. You aren't just pulling from one area, you have multiple areas to pull from. And then once again, this is an omni-content, which means that it starts with the blog, then a slideshow that you're watching, and then now the video that you're watching, and then a podcast that you're listening in on. So go check out the OmniBlog post. It's really cool. Actually, I'm really happy about it. I think it turned out really well. And then, yeah, if you have any questions for me, feel free to make a comment, reach out to me. I would love talking to you about this. I had a couple people on the show who were multipotentialites, and on top of that, I've been on someone else's show, Perry, with the Multi Show. I even have a link on that on my website if you go check it out. It's super awesome to have a chat with him. And then I think it's cool how these putty-like people are able to come up with new ideas and be so creative. If you think you're a multipotentialite, let me know. Cheers.